Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we explore the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Milan Kohut, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced, the lessons learned, and the strategies fueling future growth. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Lillie Goodrich, an executive and manager coach dedicated to building the next wave of 21st century leaders through her aligned leadership method. With over a decade of experience in HR and culture, she specializes in developing human centric leadership skills that drive business results and foster high retention. Laura's coaching focuses on guiding first time and middle managers through their transition into effective leadership roles with empathy and practical support. With that being said, Laura, let me officially welcome you to Founders Future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk today. I love this
We're excited
topic.
to have you. That's good to know. Well, let's dive into the conversation. Laura, what I always love to do is take it back in time a little bit, right? Before you even had this company, what were you doing before? And then eventually, what was the motivation for running this business?
Yeah, so I come from a background in HR. So I was in human resources for 12 years, various different industries, ranging from automotive through to insurance, through to more recently digital accessibility. So covered a lot of different industries on purpose. I really was going for breadth of experience versus depth. And I'm really glad I did that, particularly in HR, because no two HR things are the same. And what I noticed when I was in HR, a lot of the support that I was giving, particularly as I grew my career into a head of people experience role and directorship, the transition of humans going into leadership roles was one that was often ignored. And what I mean by that is individuals spend a lot of their career, the bulk of their career, being individual contributors. So they get really good at something. They get really good at doing their current job. And then when they get the opportunity to move into leadership, a lot of the skills that they have learned along the way are now not what the new job requires. And I spent a lot of my time as a HR leader supporting that transition, mainly because middle managers make up, this is not a direct statistic, but it was right at the time in my company, about 70% of any organization, which is a huge proportion. That's a huge proportion of people that are moving into new roles and not getting the support that they need to thrive and be really good. They also have a huge impact on the outputs of any business. So it's a huge focus point, and it was a really big focus point for us. And so that transition from active doer into strategic leader was one that we really focused on. And the impact of that was less about the fundamental skills that you need to do the job, but how you work with other human beings, particularly in an age now where we have multi-generational teams, which means that we've got different needs. Per team. It's not just everybody waking up, doing the job and going home. There is less of a difference between work and life at work.
Mhm.
And there is a need for an elevation in what I would say is consciousness in leadership. So knowing the person across the room from you, not in a way that you are their best friend. I don't think we have to be best friends at work, but knowing them as a human that's ultimately you are able to support getting the best out of them, which is ultimately going to get the best out of the role, which is going to give the company what it needs. So I focus a lot on this consciousness around leadership, not just actively doing the job and the tasks of the job, but everything else that comes beyond that when it comes to actually working with other human beings.
Mhm. Now, we're going to dive even deeper into this in a second, but I'm very curious. I know there's a lot of people who, once they get into the world of corporate, they basically never get out. So I'm just curious, have you always known that once you get enough experience, you want to open up something of your own, or what was the thought process?
Honestly, I didn't see myself as a solopreneur at all, let alone with the progression of where my business is going, moving into something that I would build. Um, and so I got to a point in my career where I had kind of made it. I had made it to the top of where I wanted to be. And it took me a little while being in that position to suddenly realize, like, what's next? And am I really fulfilled by doing this? And my way of thinking about HR and my way of thinking about building leadership is different than what I would say most corporate organizations believe. And I noticed that in my former role, that the way that I was doing HR really allowed us to elevate, and we grew super quickly, but our retention was great. We were innovative. We knew how to argue. We knew how to hold each other accountable to being their best versions. And there's an analogy that I've often heard from the leadership team that I was part of, is that we all appreciated that we were the black swans coming together. And so we challenged each other quite a lot. And so I never really thought that I would do it on my own, but we went through some changes. And what I really noticed was the difference between what we had built and what we were moving into. And so I decided at that point that maybe I'm onto something. And I felt like my time in corporate was coming to an end because I wanted more. I wanted to be able to explore what I had already created and maybe replicate it. And so I took the leap. I think I was just so used to wanting what I had versus actually wanting it.
Mhm.
And so I took a leap of faith, if I'm honest. Um, First time solopreneur, it's a big leap. But I didn't think that I would be doing this. I thought I was going to stay in my corporate role forever until I
What
retired.
a journey, though. Well, I'm glad that you made that jump. It's amazing, though. Like I said, we're definitely going to dive deeper now into basically everything that you've mentioned, and we're going to talk about where this journey got you eventually.
Mhm.
So let's talk about what the business looks like today, and more specifically, we're just trying to understand everything from who is like the best potential customer for you, what is the core offer that you have in place, and also what the process looks like, right?
Yeah.
So just go ahead and tell us exactly who you're looking to help and then what do you help them with?
Yeah, so the goal at the moment, and it's not where I started, there's been an evolution of this. The goal at the moment is to work with mid-sized and small businesses. That seems to be where we thrive right now. They tend to be more willing to change. However, I'm not going to rule out larger organizations. My clients that I'm dealing with now or I'm approaching are decision makers. So it's C-suite executives, HR, as well as learning and development, focusing on that mid-manager level. So what is the performance of that mid-manager level? And I'm talking first-time leaders through to sort of VP, C-suite as well. So mid-level is kind of a spectrum for everybody. And we are focused on the elevation of the consciousness around leadership. That comes with learning fundamental skills and practices, frameworks, etc. But it's focusing on how you are going to get the best out of a human, because you can teach somebody a skill, and you can teach them a framework and how to implement that, but actually having an understanding of where someone's strengths are, how to get the best out of them, how are you adapting as a leader to multiple personality traits within your team in order to drive comprehension and clear direction to the overall goal of the business. So my the program that we have at the moment is called the Aligned Leader Method. It focuses on the individual, so really focusing on how each leader is showing up to their way of leading. There's a lot of sort of old dusty manuals out there around how to be the best leader, but the best leader you can be is the one that you are actually designed to be. So we focus on really learning your leadership style, owning it, being able to talk about it, being able to describe what natural strengths you have based on natural skills and talents, but also what you've learned through experience and how that shows up. We focus on the way in which you make decisions. Not everybody makes decisions the same. Some people can go off a gut feeling, some people need a bit of time. We also focus on where you contribute best in a wider team. So, this is all development of the self, having an acute awareness of who you are as a leader and how you show up. Then we move into what that looks like in teams. So now you have a conscious awareness of how you show up. There's an understanding that someone else might show up differently. So we focus on what we call team dynamics, and team strength. We then take that and move it into the third phase, which is around business strategy. So what is the business trying to achieve, whether that's high growth, whether it's the sustainability and stability, whether that's going through change, and we look at what the company goals are versus the team that they have. Because if the company is looking to go through a growth phase, you're going to want certain skills in order to support that. And there's an admittance to that and to knowing that if you are going to make changes or you're going to do things as a business, do you actually have the crew to help build that ship or to move that ship forward? So it's a three-pronged approach. We can either start at the business end to do focus on what it is that the company's looking for. Do we have goals in place? All those fundamentals, but actually looking at the talent and how we're going to develop that talent and put the right talent in the right seats versus just making the talent fit the seats.
Mm, interesting. Now, I do believe that this varies from case to case, as in any other industry, but what would you say is the average duration of a client working with you to basically walk them through the entire journey and basically set them up for success?
Yeah, so I at the moment what we're looking at is the quickest we would get through it would be 3 quarters of a year. So we would focus on around 10 to 12 weeks on an individual learning basis. Then we would do the same for a team basis. Then we would look at the business structure. So you're looking at 9 months if you just do one after the other. However, that can be condensed likely over around 6 months if you're going to come at it from a two-pronged approach. So you have the business decision makers, the leadership team going through strategy, as well as kickstarting the leadership individual journey as well. So you're looking at sort of 6 to 12 months, depending on the company's pace, what time is available. And we always want to make sure that there's actually availability for people to dedicate time to this. This isn't just something that we come in, teach some stuff and leave. This is a focusing on a partnership and implementation of what people are learning. We don't
Mhm.
want it to be uh, a really nice day that people enjoy, and then you kind of walk away, you feel pumped, but then you forget it all. This is about actual implementation and embodiment of what you're learning.
Gotcha. Now, I'm very curious about what you're going to say to this, but
Mhm.
I know for a fact there's a well, the number of people who are doing this is growing within your industry, but there's
Mhm.
people basically pivoting from the side of business in which you are as of right now, and basically just helping the companies to have a better retention, understand what to do with their people, how to support them, how to, create the best environment. And they're pivoting towards helping the managers themselves
Mhm.
and basically shifting to what can I do to actually enjoy my journey within the contract, how to get the most out of it.
Mhm.
Is that also part of your plan for the future to focus on the other side of this, or what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, so if I've understood the question correctly, I think retention is relative to what you are trying to achieve. Um, if a company has high retention, I think there's loads of questions you can ask as to why that might be. And actually, is it appropriate to have high retention at various stages of business? I don't, I believe that it is. I believe that it is appropriate to have higher retention depending on what it is that the company's looking to do. There seems to be this negative connotation around retention being high sometimes, but I think then there's not as many questions that are being asked around why that might be. What's the story behind it? For example, if you've got an early stage startup, there's a lot of heavy lifting to do, and there's leadership styles that work better
Hmm.
in that environment. And a startup is usually only a startup for what, maybe a year? How long can you call yourself a startup for, is my question, until you're in business. And so that early stage, there's a lot to do, there's a lot of inspiration, there's a lot of energy that needs to pour in. Some people love that phase and that's all they want to do. So you might have higher retention, but that's acceptable. It's known, it's okay, versus if you are looking to be in that steady state, larger organizations tend to linger here. That's not always the case. Um, but I think that there is an attunement that you need to do with the level of retention that you have based on what you're trying to achieve.
Hmm.
And that links back into the work that we do because we look at the types of leaders that you need at any one time. We have a leadership blueprint that we use that's backed by a newer modality that's called human design, and it focuses on modern science and ancient wisdoms, basically. But it allows you to really take your people and allow them to shine at the most appropriate time. And then it allows them to also make a choice of whether they need to move on or whether they are happy to stay in the consistency that's going to come from staying at this company.
Mhm.
So I would say that there's development either way and acceptance of the development of a leader as well.
And now that you mentioned those startups, I also got reminded there is a big part of the ICP, side of things that we discussed that I wanted to follow up on. And more
Mhm.
specifically, obviously, everybody has a different approach when it comes to the decision making, whether you're going to end up working with somebody or not, right?
Mhm.
And I know you mentioned as of right now, you're going for mid-sized companies and small businesses primarily, but if there is anything specific that you could mention to the audience and the listeners to have a deeper look into what is that process for you to actually decide? What are those specific qualifications that you're looking for?
Yeah, so we're focusing on this size, but that's not to say that we wouldn't look at larger organizations where we are as a business right now. That feels like a match. There's tooling and more operational modeling that we need to do in order to be able to service larger organizations, but that's coming in the evolution of what we're doing. And what I would say to those teams at the moment is I have an awareness of what certain pain points are. And I think if there is a willingness to discuss beyond just the pain that they're feeling in the stage of growth that they're at, and to get really uncomfortable with trying something new, then those are the people that I'm really keen to talk to. I'm not saying that I'm going to be the person for everybody, but if there is a willingness to try something new that's not going to push them into doing the way that corporate's always been done. I do think the way that corporate has is being done for newer companies is outdated. There is a high chance that 50% of the workforce are going to be individualizing as much as possible over the coming years, probably in the next 2 to 3 years. And how corporations actually responds to that is very important. And to be able to create what feels like individuality in a corporation is going to be the biggest impact that they can have in order to retain or attract the people that they need at the time that they need it. So I would say that the pain that they are feeling it's not uncommon. They're not the only ones going through it, but the choices that they make in how to manage that and utilize it is going to be really important. And that's where I would like to talk to them about what is their plan to solve what is becoming a topic, a very hot topic, and it's coming around fast.
Yeah. Now, Laura, if you would allow me, I also want to talk about the back end side of the business for a second. So, more specifically about having a good client acquisition system in place, right? So the question is, what are you currently doing on the marketing slash lead generation side to be able to bring these companies into the program and have a bigger impact as a company yourself?
Yeah, so this is something that's again an evolution point, and I think it's always an evolution point when you are a solopreneur. The way that I'm approaching it at the moment is I'm hunting out where these people hang out. A lot of the business that I get is through referral, so people who have experienced the program themselves, or have worked with me previously. I use LinkedIn as a platform to be able to connect and find out where events are that I can attend and actually meet people in person. I think there is a huge power in selling when you can actually connect with somebody and they hear your voice, they feel your energy, they get to ask you the questions that they have rather than me trying to sell into them. They actually get to ask questions of me to see if I'm a fit. I hang out a lot at various events, whether it's small business owner events or whether it's industry events like learning and development, or I spent a bit of time in digital accessibility. I also look at where I can connect with HR leaders. So there's a community, various communities that I'm part of, whether it's through online or in person. But mainly the business channel is LinkedIn for now. But the more I can, for me, what works, the more I can get out into my community, the better. I think that allows other people to meet me as somebody who would be taking them through the process. So there's a couple of tools that we use in the back end for monitoring that. It's not hard outreach. I don't think the approach that we have in terms of how we sell, we're not selling systems and tools per se. We're selling humans. We're selling human support to another human. So that element of um, outreach, I'm quite sensitive about. I want it to actually feel personal. Obviously, with the rise in AI, people are noticing when something isn't genuine. So my mission is to be as genuine as possible in my outreach, not just spamming people with messages about what we're doing.
Yeah. When it comes to this perspective, would you say that this is a part of the reasoning why you haven't dabbled into paid advertisement, or what is your perspective on paid ads?
I think paid ads are good if that's where your clients hang out. I would say my client base, when I think about either individual managers and leaders, or if I think about HR leaders or learning and development leaders, a lot of what they are doing in their day to day is dealing with people. So ads pop up, and I know from being a HR leader, um, getting a ton of emails about programs um, that don't feel right often get ignored. And the benefits of actually having someone refer you, our close rate from referrals is near on 100%, because you're selling to people. This isn't an off-the-shelf product, and this is something that comes with a partnership, and that takes a lot more trust building. So the sales cycle is longer because there's an initial connection, there's a couple of deep dives into what somebody is looking for, then there's an opportunity for bespoke solutioning using the product and the frameworks that we have. But how can we actually make it individualized? Because no two companies are the same. They can have similar issues, but the manifestation of that internally is going to be different people, different stages of growth. Um, and so I don't disagree with paid ads. I think there is value there. I think the platform in which you use is the most important thing. And I would
Hmm.
say paid ads, probably through LinkedIn, are going to be the strongest for us because it's where most business people hang out. However, these days with social media being so accessible and available and attention grabbing, there is opportunity there for us to have a look at that.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about delegation, though. This is also one of the biggest topics on the podcast. And I don't know if you've already built out your teams for whether it's marketing, sales, or whatever else, but what is your perspective on delegation, having that ability to give the reins away, and how far along in the process are you yourself?
Yeah, so this is something that we talk about as a fundamental skill of leadership. How you go about doing that is really focusing on what you're good at and being okay with that. We grow up in worlds where we have to be good at everything, in order to pass the bar to get the next job. And so the letting go of what you have trained and forced yourself to become good at can be tricky. So we teach this. But when it comes to me, this is always something that I find insightful is, do I practice what I preach? And it's tough. I have support. I'm a big fan of giving away what I can in order for me to focus on my strength, which is ideation, creation, being in my community, not selling, but spreading the word and allowing people to mull it over. And that's where I need to be. So I have marketing support. I have social media support. I also have teams that enable me to create content in the most authentic way, which means that I'm not just filming myself looking at a camera. This is conversation. This is when people are going to get the best out of me. The other thing that we're delegating out at the moment is the build of a future platform. And that's not something that I have the skills to be able to do. But what comes with that is it's not just the build. I can have an idea about it, but I don't know the ins and outs of how that gets done. So the next phase at the moment is looking at somebody that can come in and support the actual developmental side of it. That's not a skill I possess. And so
Yeah.
that's the next focus. I'm a big fan of delegation because if you don't let go of the reins, you're first and foremost, you're going to burn out, but you don't get to focus on the very thing that you wanted to focus on when you started your career.
Yeah, building out the platform, that definitely sounds exciting. So you can tell us a little bit more about that though. But let's talk about, what the future holds in general, specifically if you think about the next 12 months. What would you say are going to be the biggest goals, targets, revenue, milestones, whatever comes to your mind?
So the first and foremost, the goal that we're going after for Q1 is to get as many uh, groups through our first stage aligned leader method before we move into testing the aligned teams method, and then going into the aligned business method. So those are the three prongs. First quarter, we want to get at least sort of 8 groups through aligned leader method. They can be teams, they can be individual managers. So what we would say like an open cohort. And we also want to aim for a group of senior HR leaders as well to experience it, as well as potentially some instructional designers. So the first goal is to get people through the program so we can start to collect raw data of what people are learning, what's the impact. And then by Q2, we want to move into, or at least have 2 or 3 teams going through the program as well. So this year is all about getting people through the program so we can collect the data. By the end of the year, we want to be able to have that data, at least halfway through the year, to have that data to be able to start building out what we would call our platform, where we start to look at how do we take what people are learning and build out um, almost like an online coach access, but it's based on the individual's profile. So looking to use AI in a very nuanced way, using our methods, not just having it go out anywhere, but using our methods and our coaching styles based on the data that we're gathering from our programming, to be able to link them back to their own leadership style and how that shows up, and to really help them in those, oh my goodness, moments where managers get given a situation and they just have to deal with it in the time. But it allows them to have almost like a coach in their pocket. It also can be a platform that leaders can use in order to assess the performance of the team, whether the team is the right fit. Are they making changes as a business? What talent do they have as well? So by the end of this year, we're looking to have that all beta tested and actually launching as a full scale program. But we've got to do that in segments at the moment. And then in terms of revenue, that's something that we're discussing at the moment because based on the build that we're doing, this year's probably going to take a bit of a hit as it always does. Um, so we haven't quite decided that right now.
Gotcha. Now, when you think about growing in this way and hitting all of those goals that you just mentioned, out of everything, what would you say is probably going to become the biggest challenge to make it happen?
Um, I would say the biggest thing I would say is acceptance of something new. A lot of businesses, although they might be entrepreneurial in what they are building, they can then fall back on old traditional ways, which is kind of ironic because they're so innovative outwardly, but then not innovative inwardly. And so I think there is a hesitancy at the moment to try something new and for it to do well. I
Mhm.
think it's that human mentality of stick to what I know. But if what you know is working, then there is a need to make a conscious change. And change is scary. You have to be vulnerable in order to be courageous. And so being vulnerable in a business means that you have to take some risks when it comes to trialing something new and trusting it. And knowing that if you are innovative, it probably links to the level of agility that the business has. So you pivot. It's no different than making any other business decision. could be the best decision that you make. And if not, you make another decision. So I would say that's our biggest challenge is the acceptance of something new and the company's willingness to get ahead of what is inevitably coming, um, which is just more of the same, that there's a new era of leadership. And if you want to be ahead of it, great. If you're not ready for it, just follow along, and see. Maybe you're the sort of like middle group when it comes to change. You're not at the forefront of change. Sit comfortably, watch what it does, and then get in touch. But yeah, that would be my focus, is allowing people to trust the process and to take the leap.
Yeah, I think you just read my mind because I was about to ask for an advice, and within your answer, you also provided that. So that's brilliant. Awesome. Well, Laura, this was an amazing conversation. So I just want to say a huge thank you for taking the time today, sharing the story with me and the listeners. And if anybody from the audience wanted to reach out, get in touch, maybe even work with you, what is the best way to go about that?
Yeah, so email is always quickest. It goes straight into my inbox, Laura at lauralillycoaching.com, or my website, Laura Lilly Coaching, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I hang out most. It's also where I post regularly, so you'll get to know my style. I'm more than happy to for people to follow along, see what I talk about, to see if it's a fit for them. DMs on LinkedIn are always welcomed, if you want to chat. But yeah, those are the three main ones.
Love it. So Laura Lillie Goodrich on LinkedIn. Everybody reach out. Love it, Laura. So to our listeners, if today's conversation inspired you as well, make sure to subscribe to Founders Future on your favorite platform. And also, if you're a business owner, more specifically a consultant or a coach, or you own an agency and you're trying to scale the business and really enhance both your sales and marketing efforts, also visit closers.io, get in touch with our team, and discover how exactly we scaled our company from zero to over 30 million per year in less than 3 years. Until then, keep on crushing it, and I'll see you on the next one.